Hey everyone, we want to welcome you back to the Live Like Jesus podcast. We are so excited that you're joining us. Our hope is that we learn to live like Jesus lives so that we can do what Jesus did. As always, my name is John. I'm joined by our lead pastor, Bryan. Say hello.
Hello, and I like how you said, as always, my name is John.
Yes,
That's
it never
good.
changes.
It never changes. Not since Leroy and Jennifer named you.
Yes, they gave me a good one, so I
Yeah.
kept it. No, and we're also joined by our friend, and again, for the second episode, Miss Shanna. Thank you
And
for
my
being
name
with
is
us.
always Shanna.
It's always Shanna.
Always
yes.
Shanna. Yes.
I meant as always, I'm here.
Yes.
You know.
Oh,
what
I know,
mean?
but it was
Yeah.
just funny how you.
It's the turn of
Yeah,
phrase.
I get it.
A little New Iberia came out.
Listen, hey, and if we've learned anything, we're going to joke just a little bit with
Just
each
a
other.
little bit. We'll get through it. So,
Yeah.
all right. So we're getting into the topic of giving again, and the habit of giving. This podcast is all about the 9 habits as we live like Jesus and making those a part of who we are. And so we're on the topic of giving. And last episode, we really got into how giving is about our personal spiritual growth, how it impacts and shapes our faith and our trust in God. And so today we're going to take that a step further, and we're going to look at, all right, how does this giving, how does it go even beyond that to where I can start to bless my community and different things through God working through me, right? And so we'll get into some of that. Before we do, though, Bryan, we had a great question after the last episode about the tithe. And so I think we should go back and kind of dive into the tithe and maybe answer this question that someone asked, and this has been asked in a couple of different small groups in our church of, well, if I serve at the church, does that reduce the amount that I have to tithe? Can I also tithe my time?
Yeah. Have to tithe is an interesting phrase.
That's an interesting
First of all,
phrase as well, yeah.
You know, so I think two things I would say. Number one, it's about your relationship with money. That's ultimately, I think, what God's concerned about is your relationship with and to your money. And so the turn of phrase of, well, if I give my time, then I get to keep this money.
There you go.
There seems to be a little bit of an unhealthy, I think God would say there's an unhealthy relationship with your money here. That's because it feels like you're trying to skirt. The other thing, and this is just going to be kind of plain, simple, straightforward, is the word tithe means money. It doesn't mean anything other than that. So it's just, there's nothing, when you go into the Old Testament, you know, which is where this is based in, and then of course carried forward, as we said last time, into the New Testament, nowhere Jesus nor any of the apostles, I mean, Paul, when he's talking about in 2 Corinthians, he doesn't go to the other churches like in Corinth and be like, hey, if you can go give an hour of your time to the church in Jerusalem, that'll be good enough. No, he's like, no. They need financial support. They need finances to be able to do the things that God's called them to do. And God's kingdom, it does. It needs that. So yes, serving is an aspect of our life, but serving's another one of the 9 habits.
Yeah, it's also a habit.
It's you know, if we can't combine these two and be like, oh, these are the same thing, because
Right.
the scripture, Jesus nor the scripture equates them as the exact same thing. When it talks about tithing, that's financial. And there's really, I think we're kind of maybe deceiving ourselves a little bit if we think it's like, man, if I serve at the church, what? I mean, my time's worth about $20 an hour. So I don't know, that feels a little unhealthy to me.
What if I felt really good about myself and I'd say my time is worth like $1,000 an hour?
Yeah. Yours probably is.
Yeah. No, and I think that's the big thing, right? One of the traps we can fall into when we think about this concept of giving is only thinking about the tithe. But giving is actually about a lifestyle of generosity, you know? And so Jesus called us to go beyond the tithe. We talked a lot
Yeah.
about that in the last episode.
Yeah, I mean, the widow that we talked about last time, that was who blew him away the most. And she went beyond.
Yeah, and so the questions of what's the minimum amount I have to give to be okay, that question shows our heart. And if you watched the last episode, you saw we talked a lot about how our hearts are affected by all this, and that's the most important thing. And so if I'm looking to get out on the easiest way possible, which is how I am with a lot of things in life, you know, when it comes to like schoolwork or whatever, if I'm looking to say what's the least amount I have to do, that shows more about where I am at than the actual definition or
Yeah.
clarification of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And so if we're looking at a lifestyle of generosity, and this takes us into our episode today, is if we're looking at a lifestyle of generosity, the truth is as we get our finances under control, as we begin to allow God to take control of that and really shape our finances around his will and his pattern for our life, we're going to see that there's going to be some excess and some more that we can even do through our finances. You mentioned that that's become a reality in y'all's life over the years. And so I want to talk a little bit about what we can do as we go beyond even the church walls. And so, Bryan, we often think in terms of giving as only tithing, but Jesus calls us to care for the poor. He calls us to care for the widow and the orphan. And, from a biblical perspective, what does it look like to give, even above and beyond the tithe that we're called to give?
Yeah. So my conviction is that the tithe is where I think Jesus believes we all start. It's where you start. And then ultimately it's anything that God asks of us, then we should joyfully do. And so when it comes to the question of giving beyond the tithe, that's a thing that I think it becomes down to. When the Lord calls you to do something, we should joyfully jump into that and do it. And what it's all ultimately probably going to do is it's like, that's going to be hard because ultimately I'm probably going to have to sacrifice something for myself in order to meet this need that God's placed upon my heart to help someone else with. But C.S. Lewis, he always said, if you look around and your standard of living is the exact same as your non-Christian neighbors and friends, then your standard of giving is probably too small. And I think he probably was onto something there.
C.S. Lewis, he had a way of putting things.
Yeah. And we're talking about a guy who like gave a lot away, like all his Narnia profits and everything. Like he gave a ton of that away.
Yeah. And so as we do that, as we give beyond what we're doing, and it's going to connect us with our community. It's going to connect us with the people around us. I'll tell y'all personally, some of the most disappointing moments in my life is when I felt God calling me to do something like that, and I wasn't prepared for it because I hadn't turned it over. I was holding on. I was compartmentalizing, like we talked about in the last episode. You want to talk about like the disappointment? In those moments, I have felt that disappointment.
There's a funny story. I can tell a funny story. At least I found it funny. I don't know. Sometimes my sense of humor is not the same as everybody else's. But when Shay and I were living in Memphis, we were doing the Dave Ramsey envelope system. She and I did the financial peace system, which is great. And that's a good resource for people to get started with. It's what helped y'all.
Yes.
But anyway, so we were doing the envelope system for some of our things. And so I had just gone to the bank and it got the required amount of cash to put into envelopes for us. And so I was going to the store and a guy walks up to me. This is in Memphis. A guy walks up to me. He goes, "Hey man, I need $20. You got $20 where I can go get gas?" And I was like, I know I have $20, yes, I have I know in the back of my mind, I'm like, I want to tell him, no, I don't have it. So here's what I did. I said, I went in my car because I knew I grabbed a 20 and I went to hand it to him. And when he went to take it, I said, I want you to know something. Is my conviction that this is God's money. And if you're doing anything other than what you told me you were about to do with it, you're probably going to have to answer to God for that. Oh, God. And he literally goes, never mind, I'm good.
That's incredible.
I don't know if that was the right thing to do, but that's what I did in the moment.
It was a conviction in the moment, yeah.
So,
hey man, if I got to carry around envelopes, you're going to be responsible with this money.
Because it was one of those like, I'm going to have to go home and tell my wife, hey, I gave $20 to a guy, and but he ultimately wouldn't take it.
grocery envelope was just as good as it was before, yeah. Well, honestly though, but you were ready in that moment to give if he would have been willing to take it with your terms. But I do think that like being ready connects us with people in our community. Mm-hmm. And so Shanna, I want you to maybe speak to like, when have you seen this type of generosity extend beyond our local communities and like bridge, some sort of divide, whether it be geographical or cultural or anything like that? When have you seen that kind of God use generosity to do that with people?
Well, I have a story when we were going through the dark years.
If you don't know what she's talking about, she talked a lot about that on
yes.
the last episode.
Yes. The first 15 years of our marriage.
Yeah.
One of our sons was going to go to student summer camp.
Oh, yeah.
And as we all know, that's pretty costly.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
as costly then as it is now, but it was a lot of money that we didn't have at that time. And so somebody sponsored him. And so there's those opportunities to send people on mission trips. We go to Honduras through our church. There are other churches that there are many opportunities for us to have that eternal mindset.
I love that. Yeah.
Because we're not taking any of this with us.
That's right.
And so, sure, you might want to leave something, for your kids, and that's biblical too, but we can't hoard it. And when God calls us to give so that someone else can be the hands and feet of Jesus, because maybe I can't go. Maybe I've not been called to go on the mission trip, but there are people that have been called and maybe they don't have the means, not because they're living with, outside of their financial means, but
those trips can be expensive.
They can be expensive. It's the flights, it's the housing, it's the food, it's all the things. And so they may be financially responsible with their money, but just don't have that extra to go. And so there's so many opportunities for mission trips. We have preteen camp coming up. And again, as I said, those things are costly. We have student camps coming up this summer. Lots of opportunities for people to donate and help some of these, help the growth, help to further God's kingdom in so many ways.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because Sunday, an exact thing happened just like that. Justin and I, our student pastor Justin and I were standing in the hallway, and a man comes up to us and he says, "Okay, I have something that I want to do. I don't know how to do it. I need y'all's help." And so we start talking to him, and he wants to sponsor 5 scholarships for camp this summer. Wow. And so he didn't know what to do, but I thought about him a lot this week. He has no connection to the student ministry. His kids are grown and gone.
Yeah.
He has no grandkids that live here in the local area, so zero connection. But this idea of generosity has now connected him with these students. And I think, one of the things I shared with him Sunday, I thanked him and I told him how to do it. And I thanked him and I just said, like, what you may never know is that it isn't just this student that might get help. We've seen students reach their families. We've seen, how many times have we seen that happen? And so this reverberates in eternity when we make decisions like this. And so I think that's really important for us to see as we do that and to kind of see how that happens. And I think one of the things that sort of gets in the way of us doing this is, and we've covered this a little bit in the last episode, is that there are barriers when it comes to giving in our lives. There are things that get in the way. When we talk about stories like that, it's like, all right, I'll give it all away if that's the case,
Yes.
But then we go to our, budget book and we're like, I don't know if I can pay that. I don't know if I can do that sort of thing. And so there are barriers and there's fear, there's financial pressure, there's, and those things can make it feel impossible to get on this journey of giving. And so, Bryan, how do we deal with the fear? How do we...
Living like Jesus can seem impossible at times. So we've created a free guide for you. Just go to the link in the description and you'll get a free guide to help you take your next steps in living like Jesus. Also, while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe.
How do we deal with this idea that...
Well, I think Shannon would be great at answering this because she lived it, and you lived it, y'all living in fear now and then experiencing peace. Because the one thing I would say is, first of all, is equip yourself with the tools necessary, the understanding, the biblical knowledge, and then make the intentional decision of we're going to live differently. And that's what I hear in y'all's story, starting with like, we're going to do something different. And then if you don't mind sharing like how from there and then y'all getting in financial peace, and do you mind sharing that?
Yeah. So it was, living that way, paycheck to paycheck, more bills than money coming in.
Did y'all have kids at that time too?
We did.
Yeah. Which adds a whole nother layer of fear.
A whole nother dimension. Yes. Yeah. And I've talked to them about that. Do they remember it? And my daughter said she remembered the time where there was just a lot of no's. And she said, and then I remember, Mom, we went to Walmart and she said, I want some barrettes or something. And you said, yes. And she said, it was like $2. And that's where we were. Like, didn't even have an extra dollar because every dollar we had coming in was designated somewhere. And then the extra dollars that weren't coming in were designated somewhere too.
Sure, yeah.
And so just first it was being obedient to knowing God's word, knowing what he was calling us to do, starting at some point. And it was just a change of mindset because our hearts, we weren't doing it so that, we were doing it because we wanted to be obedient and we loved the Lord. But we weren't doing it so God would get us out of this. Yeah. It wasn't that. It was just that we knew that God could get us out of this. We didn't look for it to happen overnight, but we were doing it because we wanted to be obedient to the Lord and we knew that there was peace in that. Yeah. And so he did bring us out of it. Through that process of being obedient, again, as we said, in our last filming, it didn't happen overnight. Sure. We didn't get raises. But honestly, it's just a miracle because I don't even know what happened. I don't know how that money. I love that you're saying that though. Things. Yeah. But it worked. And so as we started being obedient to tithing, then God moved us here to Bluff, and then that's when we got into financial peace. And so we started learning how to navigate. What we need to designate first. Tithing off the top, but then what do we need? This is the money we need for groceries. This is the money we need for this, and organizing it, not being obsessed with it because then it becomes an idol. I think when you're living outside of your means, it is an idol because it's all you focus on. Yes. Your mind is not on Jesus. That's right. And so, I think about it. I don't know how it happened. Just it was a process, but he did it.
Well,
all I can say
when
is
God works, that's typically how you look back and you're like, what even just happened?
That's what I love about y'all's experience is it wasn't real difficult, but y'all had to make one decision, which is we're going to love and obey the Lord. And then we trust him with the outcome of everything. Yeah. And everybody can make that decision. That's right.
We can do that.
Everybody can decide, I'm going to love and obey the Lord. And Jesus said, if you love me, you'll obey me. And so that's so great though, because we can get like this, like, I don't even know where to start. Where do I begin? So I love y'all's story of like how we just decided to do was love and obey the Lord. And then we'll see where it goes from there. Yeah. And here you are. Yeah. And it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you've mentioned, and Bryan, you even mentioned it, that can help people. Where do I start? You do need a plan. A plan helps. And so financial peace has been mentioned a couple of times. It's a Dave Ramsey course. If you've been in this world at all, you've heard of Dave Ramsey sort of thing. And so this is a group that we have offered at our church in the past. I'm pretty positive we're going to be offering it again coming up soon. And so and like ongoing a little bit to make sure that we have the resources to help people. Can you share kind of specifically what did financial peace do for you?
Well, I think just helping us to organize, to get organized. Like you said, you had the envelope system, and so before it was like, okay, we want to go out and eat. Let's go out and eat. But now you're limited to it's strategic. And it's intentional about, okay, we get to go out and eat 2 times this month.
That's right.
Yeah. Instead of just living
willy-nilly.
Yeah, that's right. That's good.
I told Shay one time, I was like, our eating out envelope has a hole in it somewhere.
It's leaking out.
It's leaking out, going somewhere else.
100%.
So it just helped us just to be intentional about where every dollar was going. Yeah. And to see, okay, where are we spending money that we shouldn't be spending on unnecessary things? And it just put us in a better place to be able to give outside of tithing. And so, we attribute that to Mona and Rick Mohat. They were our leaders at that time. It just took our finances to a different level.
Yeah.
because now we weren't just being obedient with tithing, but now we're being obedient in all areas and trying to be good stewards with the money.
Steward is a great word. And I think that that's what so many of us do is when it comes to our finances, we sort of just hope and pray that they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
You know, Dave Ramsey has a couple of turns of phrase that I think have stuck with me over the years. One of them is if you don't tell your money where to go, it's going to go.
It's going to go.
That's
You
right.
just won't know.
That's right.
And so like tell your money, every dollar has a name, tell it where to go, that sort of thing. And the other thing is like, you know, right, for a while you might have to live like no one else. So later you can give like no one else. And like those are the phrases that have really stuck with me over the years as I thought about, Amber and I have been through financial peace as well. And I think that peace is the big word there. It's not about like a budget system. It does help with that. Obviously it's a big part of it, but it brings peace because you actually have a plan. You kind of know where things are going. Sticking your head in the sand and hoping things are fine never works. No. It absolutely never works. I want to.
I love the realism of the Bible. This is Proverbs 23. So in 23:4 it talks about money, and then in 23:5 here's what it says about money. If this doesn't feel real, I don't know what does. It said, when your eyes light on it, it is gone. For suddenly it sprouts wings, flying like an eagle toward heaven. That's where the phrase
has been the reality.
My money sprouted wings and flew away. Where it went, I don't know.
When I was 16, I can remember standing in my friend's house. His mom was really wise. And she said, you know, we were all talking, oh, I'm going to get this job so I can make this much money. I'll never have any financial problem. And she always would tell us, we were 16 years old, no matter how much money you make, you can spend it if you don't budget wisely.
Yeah.
You know, and that has stuck with me over the years. And it is absolutely true. I have proven that.
That's not theory. That's life.
That is in practice, baby. So, but you know, we talked a little bit about the ripple effect of like when we live this type of lifestyle, how this ripples into eternity. And it goes beyond us and beyond what we could do on our own. And I want to tell a little story that I heard just this past Sunday. A lady walks up to me and she says, and I won't say her name, but she says, 8 years ago, we had a leak in our front yard with our water. And our water bill was almost $400, and there was absolutely no way we could pay it. No way we could pay it. Well, our church, every now and then, just goes to the water office, and we pay water bills. You may not even know that if you come to our church, but our missions team, Bill Saxby, and those, they go and they will just pay water bills at times, especially at certain times of the year and different things. Well, she was one of those that paid, and she asked, wait, who did that? And they said, well, First Moss Bluff paid your water bill. And she's been coming to church for the last 8 years. And so, and her whole family, like people in her family have been baptized at our church since then. And you want to talk about a ripple effect.
Yeah.
That changes family trees. That changes family legacies. And all because our church members give generously so that our church can then go and do things like that and give generously in that way. And so
that's awesome, man.
What an incredible story.
That's amazing.
I was like, I just didn't even know what to say when she said that. I said, that's the picture of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Sort of
and
thing.
people may not even know that we have a benevolent fund for things like that.
Right.
People call our church all the time for help.
Sure.
And of course, we don't want to enable people to continue living outside their
Right.
means. But
There's a process for it.
There is.
Yeah.
We have a very good plan for that. But sometimes things happen outside of people's control. And so with the benevolent fund, people are able to call our church and they may need help with something and we can meet a need for them. And so not everybody knows that our church does that, or, you know, that we do have a fund for that people can give to just to meet anonymous needs.
I love that. The last thing I want us to get into today is what you were saying about your family made me think of this a little bit deeper. You had said your daughter kind of noticed that there were more no's and then there was a yes. Sometimes in order to get on this journey, we have to change the culture of our families. And that can be some of the most difficult moments. And so this question is for both of you. How do you shape your family to get on board with what we're doing? How do we pass on this culture of generosity to our kids, to our families, to even future generations? What have y'all done to kind of pass that on from where you are?
I wish I could say that we have. We talk to our adult children. We
Sure.
have. I have asked them, "Are you tithing?" But are you giving? But we didn't teach our children. I wish we had. I think it's something that Christian parents need to do.
Like to start early, you mean?
Yeah, to start early and to start teaching them God's word and the obedience in that. I think our kids can see us doing it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they understand what we're doing. I think we need to talk to them about it, and they need to be taught. And so I know that Vaughn grew up with parents that tithed, but and he knew the importance of that. But as far there needs to be a teaching going on for our children. And when we receive something, even if it's a gift card, I mean, maybe not everybody's convicted in that, but our kids gave us a huge gift card to go to a really nice restaurant this past Christmas, and we both felt like this is like cash. We need to give on that, and so we need to give back on that.
That's taking it to the next level there.
Well,
I love that.
Well, the Lord has given it to us, and so I just think that we need to teach our children that it all comes from Him. I know I keep saying that again; it could be cliche, but it really is all His.
It's the truth.
One day, all this will burn up, and it's not going to matter. So let's do things that are eternal for God's kingdom, and God's word is very clear on that.
Well, some of the best wisdom is from failed experience, and that's what you just gave. And I appreciate you being honest about that and sharing that with us. How about y'all? What have y'all done to kind of pass this on to your kids?
Yeah, well, we started with Thatcher. So Thatcher's 22, about to be 23. From the first dollar that he ever earned at 2 years old, we told him you have to tithe. You have to give everything that God gives you. You have to give 10% to the Lord. So much so that even when he was young, there's a story that we tell. He was probably 2, and Thatcher talked very early. So my mom was actually helping him of like, hey, here, we have offering boxes. We don't pass a basket at our church. So it's an offering box. And so mom took him up he had his little envelope ready and all that kind of stuff. I think there was probably a dime in it. Who knows? But she said, okay, you need to give your money to Jesus. And he looked at her and she said, yeah, put it in the box to give it to Jesus. And he looked over in the box and he looked back at her and he said, does he live in there? So
Start early.
Yeah, start early. That's what we did. If you can, start early. If not, it's never too late. It's one of those, it's like everybody's like, man, I wish I had planted trees 20 years ago. It's like, well, if it's not 20 years ago, then today is the next best day.
Yeah.
That whole thing. So, and it's the same with this.
Yeah. My son and I were talking the other day. I said, you don't plant trees for yourself. You plant trees for someone else.
Yeah.
That'll get to enjoy it later. And I think changing the culture in your family around this isn't only for ourselves or even for ourselves. It's for the future generations of generous people and that lifestyle. And not
just generous people, but people who live at peace.
I love that,
in this
peace
area.
Field. Yeah.
Where hopefully, my son's about to get married, which I'm so excited about. And they're going to start off just like everybody else does, just like we did, this is going to be probably the lowest financial point of your whole life as far as like your earning capacity.
Yeah.
And so, but just to watch them be at peace with that aspect of their lives, man, that to me, there's that is priceless.
Yeah.
To see
really
my kids be at peace in that area of life. Cause to my knowledge, Thatcher, he's just, he doesn't, at least he hasn't voiced it to me. He doesn't worry about it too much. It's like, yeah, it's going to be okay. So,
yeah, And if you've started a little late, it might be a little harder.
Yeah, it is.
It won't be as easy as if you started early, but it's worth it and it's possible. Yeah. And what we need to remember and remind ourselves is that by changing that culture of our families, it goes beyond us. It goes beyond our families. And so I think it's an important thing for us to do. It can shape communities. It can shape generations. It can shape so much around us. And so as we wrap up, I want to just, the kind of the big thing that I've been hearing in this episode is that, this isn't just about money.
That's right.
This isn't just about. The last 2 episodes have shown us it's about so much more than money. It's about our relationship to money, which is our relationship to God, our trust in Him, and that sort of thing. And so it's really about a posture of being open-handed with everything, because as Shanna said so many times, it's not ours anyway. It's His. It's all His. And I've heard you say, Bryan, He lets us keep most of it.
Yeah.
How good is He?
Yeah.
That sort of thing. He could ask for all of it. And so if you haven't started giving, this is just like last time. We want to help. We want to encourage you. Take your next step. Whatever that is for you. If you've already started, take whatever your next step is. Continue on this lifestyle of being a generous person, but also, as Bryan just said, being a person of peace, because that's what our world needs more of. We hope that you've enjoyed this episode. If you did, make sure you subscribe to our Live Like Jesus podcast. Share it with your friends. Like it. That helps it get out to more people that way. I want to thank y'all for being a part of it. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you,
thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time right here at the Live Like Jesus podcast.
So living like Jesus isn't something that comes naturally to us. And so we all need help in doing that. So we've created a free guide to help you out. Just click on the link in the description for you to take your next steps to live like Jesus.